Hello, positive people. Welcome back to Teas New Jersey. My name's Alex. Today we're going to cover the basics of tea. We're going to cover what it is, the different types that there are, and why it's important to have knowledge about the different tea types that you're drinking and the specific teas that you're purchasing and drinking. If you go into the grocery store today, a lot of brands will be marketing tea for like a bunch of different herbs that you can use in cooking and that you can use to make infusions, but they're technically not tea. They're actually, the term used in like the tea world is a tisane. Tea comes from one plant, the Camellia sinensis. There's a couple different varieties, but the main two used in tea production today are the Camellia sinensis and the Camellia sinensis assamica, and then there's other sub-varieties of those as well. So what is the Camellia sinensis? The Camellia sinensis is a slow-growing perennial evergreen bush. It does grow to be like tree size over hundreds of years, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. The Camellia sinensis plant originated in southwestern China, like right on the border with India, and it has been used for food. The leaves have been pickled for like food purposes, have been like ground down for food purposes. And then people started drinking it too. They started packing it into cakes with different spices like ginger and mandarin peel and stuff like that, and then they would boil those bricks in water to make tea. Today we use loose leaf, and we also do have some like powdered varieties like matcha, but for the most part people drink leaf tea, and this is done by steeping leaves in water. Most people in America drink like tea bag tea, and the tea bag tea is basically the loose leaf dried and either ground down into little flakes, or it's like the dust byproducts of the tea production, of like the loose leaf tea production. And we're going to be talking about the loose leaf tea production today because I feel like they definitely represent the different tea types better than tea bags, and the loose leaf tea is what the farmers are creating. They're crafting. They have decades and generations of experience in producing these leaves, and I think appreciating that should be closely connected with the experience of buying and drinking tea. First, we're going to talk about white tea. White tea is one of my favorites. I love drinking it in the morning. This tea is very bright. It's very floral. It has a little bit of kind of a citrusy kind of flavor. It's also similar to kind of like champagne. It's very light, it's very fruity, and it creates a nice liqueur that is thick and a little sweet. So you'll get a little bit of sweetness, and that sweetness lingers too. So you'll have that in your mouth for a while. It's also very cleansing, great for your stomach and skin as well. We're going to talk about the silver needle, or I'm going to show you the silver needle. This is one of the most like famous white teas, and this tea is all buds. And basically, for the picking for this tea, it's strictly buds. There are white teas that do use leaves as well, and they are very good too. And the production is the same other than the picking. So the buds and leaves are picked, they are withered for a little bit, and then they're sun dried. So basically they'll lay these buds and leaves out to sun dry, and as the moisture is drawn from the leaves from the sun, the leaves are oxidizing and getting kind of like different chemical reactions that create this finished beautiful tea. Green tea is like a hot topic today because of like research being done on its like metabolic benefits. Many articles out there tell people that there is less caffeine in green tea than there is in black tea, and while that may be true in some cases, The picking for green tea is mostly the bud and first 3 leaves. So there is going to be a lot of caffeine in green tea. So just to put that out there. While I'm on the topic of caffeine, the silver needle white tea, it's all buds. So basically, the tea plant pumps a lot of caffeine into the buds of the plant because they want those buds to turn into leaves and feed it with chlorophyll, basically. They need to get the sunlight, so they want to protect those buds. The buds are also the most tender, and the pests will try and eat the buds. So basically, caffeine is a natural pesticide. It kills bugs. So if bugs eat or try to bite onto a bud, they will die from the caffeine content. So in essence, there's more caffeine in buds. So any tea that uses mostly buds is going to have more caffeine than teas that use mostly leaves. The whole process of making green tea is in order to kill the enzymes in the leaf that cause oxidation. That's why green tea stays so green, because they're preserving that greenness, their chlorophyll and all that. The bud and first 3 leaves typically are hand-picked, and they are withered a little bit, which means the leaves are just left out, and the compounds in the leaves will kind of react and break down a little bit slightly. They're not oxidizing the leaves, so they're not encouraging it. They're actually trying to prevent it, but they want a little bit. So then the leaves are fixed, and this is where the difference in the 2 main types comes up. Chinese green tea and Korean and Vietnamese style green teas are pan-fired. What this means is the leaves are put into a heated wok and turned around and around, and what they're doing is allowing the moisture to be pulled out of the leaves. They're not cooking the leaves, they're trying to do everything they can to not burn them, but they want that moisture to be pulled out so that the leaves can then dry and be able to be preserved without spoiling. The other method of fixing is the steam fixing method. In Japan, this is the most popular method. The leaves, after withering, are put onto like a rack or put on a conveyor belt, and they either go through a machine that is steaming. There's steaming like water vapor that passes through the leaves at high temperatures and fixes the leaves, or they are like put over boiling water, which steams the leaves and fixes them. Then the leaves in both cases are dried and air dried, and then, or they could be microwave dried. That they do that in Japan. Sometimes air dried. Here I have the Chinese style jasmine pearl tea. This tea is crafted in the traditional way of letting the jasmine flowers perfume with the leaves so that the leaves take on their scent and flavor. There's no actual jasmine flowers in this tea because they are all picked out because they are a little bitter. So they try to preserve the flavor of the green tea, but enhance it with the aroma of the jasmine flowers and not that extra bitterness. The Fukumushi Sencha, and this is a deep steamed style. So from the deep steaming, the leaves get a little bit more broken. Senchas are typically very needle shaped, and we do have a premium sencha that is more uniformly needle shaped. Next we will talk about yellow tea. Yellow tea is kind of making a comeback. It was kind of controlled by like Chinese dynasties as a tribute tea, and it is currently slightly under government control, and it's mostly produced for politicians. But there are tea farms in places throughout China that are starting to produce yellow tea, and the basic production of yellow tea is the picking are the buds. Then the buds are left to wither, and then they're fixed. So it's kind of like the production of green tea, and you can see that the leaves are rather green here, So they are fixed, but all of the moisture is not taken out of them because they do wrap the leaves in order for the remaining moisture to kind of play an oxidizing role in the leaves. And what this does, so they'll wrap them and re-wrap them a couple different times, mix them up a little bit, and the finished product is kind of like this nutty flavored tea, and it has a very thick liqueur, and the liqueur is actually a yellow, so that's how it gets its name. Next we have oolong. Oolong tea is known as a semi-oxidized tea, and this is because it's not as oxidized as black tea, but it's more oxidized than like green, yellow, and white. And there are a few differences. There are roasted oolongs and unroasted oolongs. Unroasted oolongs are typically more green, and you can see that here. This is the Taiganyin oolong. It's the most famous oolong in China, although oolongs are produced in Taiwan famously as well. And the greener, the unroasted oolongs will have more of a bright floral flavor, whereas if you roast this same tea, it'll get more of like a deeper kind of flavor with deeper floral notes, similar to like orchid rose, whereas the greener oolongs have more of like a lilac magnolia kind of flavor. Oolong is typically picked the first 4 to 5 leaves, and these leaves are left to wither for a while. They want some oxidation in the leaves, and then they roll the leaves in these big bamboo drums, and basically this bruises the leaves. You want to bruise the outside of the leaves so that the juices in the leaves will come to the surface, and they will give the tea a very floral and often sour kind of flavor. So after the leaves are rolled, often they're withered again and then rolled again. They are also then put onto like a cloth and rolled up into a ball, and they are bruised by machines and hands, and then they're rolled in another machine that kind of takes out the bits, the bruised bits on the ends, so you're not getting like the dust that falls off, but you're getting the leaves, and they'll typically be rolled up like in a ball shaped. That's why oolong tea is often called like ball rolled oolong. So after they are rolled and oxidized through that process, the leaves are then fixed, and this can be done in many different ways. And then the leaves are dried and you have your Taiganyin oolong. Next we're going to go on to black tea. Black tea is produced in many countries throughout the world. I know there are even some plantations in the United States. There are plantations in Australia, India, Africa, and China. Main differences between these types of teas is the variety of the tea plant. So in China, they use primarily the Camellia sinensis variety, and in other parts of the world, they use primarily the Camellia sinensis assamica. So the assamica is what most people are familiar with, because the British started plantations in first India and then Africa with the Camellia sinensis assamica tea plant. The assamica variety, black tea, has a very brisk flavor, and it can often be like strong on the stomach, whereas the Chinese variety is slightly softer. It's sweet. It has a little bit of a malty, a little bit of vanilla notes, depending on the kind you get. Some are roasted. They're like charcoal roasted, so they have smoky flavors. So there's very diverse black tea production going on in China right now, and some of the teas are very different from the typical black tea. I have two here. This is the Golden Eyebrow black tea, and this tea is buds and leaves. And then the Keeman black tea. This was the traditional English breakfast tea, or the first English breakfast tea, famously, before the start of the plantations in India. So, the picking for black tea is, it can be bud strictly. It can be bud and first 2 leaves, 3 leaves. It can be the first 4 to 5 leaves. It depends on the kind of black tea they're trying to produce, but typically it's the bud and at least first 3 to 4 leaves. The leaves are picked, they are rolled so that all the juices come out. They want to oxidize this tea as much as they can, pretty much. It's like 90 to 98% oxidized. And then they are, so after the rolling and oxidation, they are dried. And that's what we have. Next we have pu'er. Pu'er is a fermented tea. So this fermentation is done in 2 ways, and we'll talk about those. But let's talk about the picking for pu'er tea is mostly done from aged tea trees. So the 500-year-old tea trees are going to be used strictly for pu'er, just because the roots grow down into the soil and they pick up more minerals and compounds out of the earth than younger tea trees can. And these compounds really come to life in pu'er teas, either through aging, which is one method of fermentation, or cooking, which we'll talk about, and is a different way to ferment the tea. And they are very different. It's like night and day. So the buds and first 4 to 5 leaves, depending on the type of pu'er that's being made, are picked. They are then withered, and then they're fixed. So in the raw pu'er, that's the uncooked, that's the aged pu'er, these leaves are fixed, but not completely, because they either pack these into cakes or leave them loose like this, and they want a little bit of moisture in there so that though the moisture still activates those compounds and changes the tea over time, and does it in a way that adds different flavors and different feelings to the finished tea over years. And the amount of years that people age these teas can range from like 5 to 30. 30 years would make the tea like in its prime. Also have some pu'er that was packed into cakes. This is a little cake. There are ones that are much bigger than this, but you can see the gray bits where those are the buds, and then the black would be the leaves. So because raw pu'er takes so many years for the leaves to come into their prime, many producers started cooking their pu'er leaves. They started encouraging fermentation before like waiting 30 years, so they wanted to do it quicker. So they came up with this method of laying the leaves on like a cement floor, a porous floor that has like bacterial cultures already present, so that these leaves can kind of break down and ferment in this environment, in this moist environment. And they will go in and like turn these leaves, mix them around so that there's an even fermentation. And basically what you get is this is an example of a cooked pu'er, which is also known as a ripe pu'er. These leaves do get very dark. The liqueur is very, very dark as well, like pretty much black. And so the bacterial cultures react with the leaves, change the flavor. The flavor of cooked pu'er is often described as like very musky, like a wet cave, or like a forest in the summer after a rain. It's very very earthy. The cooked pu'er is also very good for the gut. The bacterial cultures help people digest. It's typically drank after a very filling, heavy meal, so that the tea and the bacterial cultures that pass onto the tea will help your stomach digest. And also, the right pu'er can be cooked into cakes, and it can be aged. It could improve over time. So those are the tea basics, the tea type basics, kind of. And all of this information will help you know what you're drinking and know what you like. On Teas New Jersey, we have like the region that each tea grows in, and a lot of those factors do play into the flavor of the tea. So you want to be aware of what you're buying, be aware of what you're drinking, be able to like analyze the flavors and the aromas and the different feelings that you get from the leaves, in order to, if you like it, be able to find it again and drink it again and have another experience like that. And also in order to appreciate the individuality of each tea, like the uniqueness of each tea, because every year the same tea plant every year has a different flavor. And just because of the environmental changes, the aging of the tea tree, knowing all of these factors will help you in your buying experiences and enhance your tasting experiences as well. Your whole tea experience will be enhanced just by this knowledge. This is why on Teas New Jersey we have descriptions for every tea type, the production that went into the tea leaves, and the region that it's grown in, and the cultivar of the tea plant. If you really want to get super specific, because different cultivars are used for different types of tea primarily, and it's good to know the cultivar so that you can know that you're getting the best tea of that type that you're looking for. We have all that information on Teas New Jersey. Thank you guys so much. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe so you get notifications for our future videos, and keep spreading the positivity.